or if you think my jokes aren't funny, just type it in the chat and I will be able to see that. So, all right, let's get started. So the subject, the title rather, I don't want to call it subject. The title today is Money, Passion, and Sanity. So it takes a lot to be an entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur makes you in the minority in the business world. In fact, most people go through lives without touching the kind of things that we consider entrepreneurship, and they live a perfectly happy life. But you're here today because you've at some point thought about taking the dive and kind of break off from what your parents may consider the normal life to live, working a full-time job and then retire at age 60. Maybe you've been inspired by the kind of stories we hear about throughout the 90s and 2000s with Silicon Valley and the internet entrepreneurship, and you wanted to be a part of that. And in fact, if you work in the tech industry today, it's almost impossible to not think about, hey, what would happen if I just kind of quit my job and built something from scratch and become the next Amazon? It's something that has crossed everyone's mind. So it's something I've actually done, which is why I wanted to share the stories I'm about to share in this thematic element of money, passion, and sanity. Things to know before you take the dive. So I kind of designed this talk to as something I wanted to share with the 23, maybe 24-year-old me who is still working a full-time job and not knowing what's going on before quitting the job and then starting a business. My background, like Will mentioned, is unique in a sense that I went to a pretty good school and got a full-time job right out of college. But that's kind of where the similarity ends from what you will hear about in the news or in the stories, because I didn't build any venture business. And this is something I wanted to talk about a little bit more later. A lot of people, when they think the startup, and this is a very common thing because that's all we hear about. We think about venture scale businesses. And this next hour will be different for you because I wanted to give you a different perspective, and I kind of designed the talk in a way that is centered around the other side of the coin, right? If you're building a business, I think some of you, I think I saw the guest list at some point. I think some of you might actually be in a venture capital business. So if you're a partner or an analyst, you know what I mean. When you hear pitches, you're sometimes you feel like your job is turning away ideas. Now, knowing some of these ideas are actually really great ideas, but they're simply not venture scale. They don't have like a B behind the ceiling of the business, right? So we'll talk about that because that's 90% of all businesses out there. Most businesses are not venture scale businesses, but they can be completely viable. You can build them yourselves without like millions and millions of outside capital. We'll talk about that. What else? I do run multiple companies, and some of these companies are what I consider micro companies in a sense that they're profitable. They don't require any of my input, and they do just fine. So on the bottom we have some of my companies listed. The one all the way on the right is in incubation, and I will talk about my kind of aerospace venture, which is not as impressive as it sounds. I'm doing like drone related stuff, but I thought it would be cool to put aerospace on there. And how that ties into your personal passion, right? Everyone wants to do something that's in their passion, and how that relates to you planning your journey into entrepreneurship is another topic on its own. So, all right. So, like I said, I graduated college pretty much with, I didn't have like a rich relative giving me like $1 million check. Hey, start your business. I didn't really have anything. My favorite story was moving out to Seattle from Boston, and I had a suitcase, and that was it. When I moved into my apartment, I didn't have a bed because I totally didn't know I had to like buy my own furniture. So I walked down the street to Bed Bath & Beyond and got like a yoga mat, and that's what I slept on for a week. So I started with nothing. That's not true. I had a crap ton of student loans, so it's not technically nothing. So, throughout the years, I kind of went through the journey of working full-time at a big company and accumulating wealth, starting some of my own investments throughout that time, and over the course of 10 years, becoming financially independent, building some companies. So these are the stories I will be sharing tonight. Let's start with a quote. The most courageous act is still to think for yourself aloud. And the way I understand this is what does allowed mean, right? Everyone thinks, I hope. So everyone thinks for themselves and have some semblance of agency. Every time, you go through your day, you plan your week. If you work for a big company, you do weekly plannings all the time. That's an example of agency, right? Organizational agency, if you would. But what does it mean to think for yourself aloud? This is the way I see it. The entrepreneurship journey requires kind of this three-legged approach. I talked about it in the title: money, sanity, and passion. I like making analogies. So imagine this journey of you pursuing your dream or financial freedom or whatever your goal is. Maybe you just want to make a very impactful business, changing your community, whatever that is. Think of it as a road trip. You're taking out your car. You're like, hey, let's go for a drive. What do you need, right? Money is what I think of as gas in your tank. You always need money. You don't want to start the trip with no money in the tank because you wouldn't go very far. Passion is almost like your GPS, knowing where you want to go and kind of how to get there, because you can have a full tank of gas, and if you don't know where you're going, you don't have a passion that really gets you up in the morning every day, it's kind of hard to get going either. You will be just driving in circles, I guess, or end up in the wrong direction. That's even worse. And finally, sanity. Sanity is almost like how it's the hardest part to kind of tackle, but it is how you stay focused, how you improve yourself as a founder, because you will be as a founder, you will be kind of going through this personal journey without like a support element, like a huge organization that gets you periodic reviews that's saying, hey, look, you're doing this, maybe you can do this better. You will not have that. You just kind of have yourself steering the ship. Maybe you're lucky you have friends and family who are supportive, we can help you out, but it's very different, right? It's not the kind of professional input that you need to, like, hey, I want to hockey stick this business 10x in the next 2 years. Maybe if you're doing venture related stuff, I don't know if your parents did that or your friends did that, but it's kind of hard to get the right help on the right frequency. So it's a lot of time you feel like you're on your own with your sanity, and I will talk about that in one of those segments. Okay. Let's talk about why, right? Why do you want to be a founder? Because that's important. You don't want to just do it because you don't like your boss. Maybe you want to be famous because you watched a couple of movies about Mark Zuckerberg or something. The chances you're becoming famous with entrepreneurship is close to zero. So you will not be famous. I want to be super rich. Again, a lot of people are drawn to this idea of, hey, building $1 billion business. Statistically speaking, the chance of you building a business and scaling it from 0 to $1 billion in your 20s or 30s, again, is close to zero. Don't do it because you want to be rich or famous. These are not the good reasons. And if you feel motivated by those two things, it's a good time for you to do a gut check of, how long can that sustain you? Because I know people who actually started a similar journey as I, and they will never say, hey, I want to do this because I want to be rich and famous, because most people don't want to be seen as someone like that. And it's kind of quick to, you can pick up stuff like that when you talk to people, at the coffee shops, and you realize, okay, this guy is, one of those, and I will watch kind of from afar how far they go, and usually they don't get very far. I don't know why. So if these are your reasons, do a gut check. Be a founder is cool. It is not cool. Being a founder is probably the least cool thing you can do. I've known people who work full-time jobs at Microsoft or Amazon or any of the big companies, and they are way cooler than me or the founders I hang out with. So don't do it because you want to be cool. Why do you want to be a founder? It's nothing like pop culture, right? Being a founder is, let me put it this way. The kind of entrepreneurship you see about in pop culture is a lot like being race car drivers. It's very fast. Things are very exciting, very dynamic. You go from 0 to like whatever 200 miles an hour. You read about these founders, the same names, Jobs, Zuckerberg, and Bill Gates, in books and stuff. Again, that's the minority. Imagine a world where every business owner behaved like a venture CEO or founder, and just absolute risk taking and just live large. No, there will be chaos. Most business owners are just average people, and most people start the entrepreneurship journey to just almost like, again, I'm going to go back to my driving analogy, to learn how to drive so they can go to the grocery store and come back with a trunk full of grocery, and not because they want to drive 200 miles an hour on the freeway. So again, this is my take on entrepreneurship, and that's what I wanted to share, because it's a story. It's kind of a perspective you don't get a lot from these talks. Everyone's like, hey, venture, hey, have you raised $1 million check yet? That's all well and good. I'm not. I've actually built businesses that are kind of designed to be venture scale, and they're kind of still on the back burner, and I might be raising money soon. But there's nothing mutually exclusive about building a sustainable business that's immensely profitable. That's simply just not venture scale. So the reasons to be entrepreneur is vast, and it's important to know why. And I can't tell you why, which is why you don't see anything that's affirmative on this slide. But these are the things I think that are good to know is not the right reason for you to be in entrepreneurship. And hopefully by the end of this talk, you can come up with at least one affirmative reason of why you should do a startup. Okay, my reason. Kind of almost skipped the slide there. I really wanted to be financially independent and work for myself. Again, one more reason I didn't go down the path of venture entrepreneurship is if you raise money as a venture-backed business, you're still working for your investors, your board. And in fact, you'll probably be working harder than a full-time job anywhere else. What I consider myself is I don't know a good term for it, so I made up one of my own. I consider myself a lifestyle entrepreneur. I run businesses and I own businesses so they can set me on the path of having all the time back to my own control, back under my own control, and really enjoying my lifestyle, to spend my time with people I care about and on projects that have impact on communities that I'm connected with. So the kind of those words on the bottom are the first thing tonight that I want you to kind of take a breath and think about. Time is the only non-renewable resource in all of our lives. And most of us spend it to buy money. That's what a job is. You trade your time and expertise and energy, both physical and emotional, and just really turn it into money. And some people spend it on nothing at all. So what is time, right? Maybe you are in your early 20s, you just finished your education, and the education system, I'm all for it. I love education. I benefited from a great education, but it's designed for the majority. Remember, when you're on the path of becoming an entrepreneur, by definition, you will be a minority. So the way you're brought up all your life, your parenting, your education, kind of condition you to think in a way that is most likely a risk-averse mindset. Again, a consumer mindset, because that's how we're brought up and taught. And none of these things are actually very applicable or helpful in the world of entrepreneurship. Sometimes you almost need to turn everything upside down because, again, by definition, you're doing something that very few people do and requires a different gear. And the first thing, concept I want to kind of ring before you is that time is non-renewable. And how you spend time is actually the biggest decision you can, the only decision you can ever make in your life. And my reason is becoming financially independent. I have control over my time, and I can decide how to use that. Maybe one day I do want to build a venture scale business and work 80 hours a week. I have the option, I have the agency of doing that, as opposed to kind of having it foisted on me. All right, so that's the introduction. So hopefully, if I did a good job, you will have a good idea of where this direction is headed. And we will start with part one, money. Money is the easiest thing to talk about because it's almost distillable into a science. It's you can talk about money. It's numbers all day, every day, and a lot of us are left brain, right brain, whatever it is that deals with numbers. We're better at that. Let's talk about money. The subtitle here: you don't need to live in a basement. I speak with a lot of people who are in the process of wanting to be a founder. And the kind of the biggest obstacle is, hey, look, Alex, this is all great and all, but I can't just up and leave my job, right? I got bills to pay. I got, this and that. I really need the money. And a lot of people do associate, the kind of entrepreneurship where you build something completely in your garage, and that's something that some people actually do. It's a very much a romantic element of Silicon Valley. You built your company in a garage, but you don't need to do that. And here's why. Here's a picture I wanted to start with, and this is something amazingly a lot of people are not even aware of. So at least I want to bring it in front of you so you know what I'm talking about, and decide for yourself. Most people, the top half of this flow chart, most people, their relationship with money is, again, we started with time, right? You turn time into money with your job, and that's all great. And then you spend your money on your livelihood, maybe pay rent, pay bills, and buy food, and go out and eat or whatever. And then whatever's left over, you spend it on luxury. So maybe you save up money for a really nice car. Great. So that's the consumer mindset. That's the consumer mindset that's kind of started in the Western world after World War II, and then that's kind of spread all over the modern world. And that's how most people are taught and brought up to, that's their relationship with money, because they have no other awareness of what money can do for them, and they stay there. So now entrepreneur, I'm almost joking when I tell people entrepreneurs turn their time literally into building their business, and the business makes profit as almost a side effect of being a good product. The business itself is a product, and it makes money, and the profit, some entrepreneurs reinvest it in the business. And maybe if you're lucky, if you're good, you have some money left over and you can spend it on essential stuff like food and shelter, right? The last part is almost semi joking, but this is the kind of mindset that is required if you are thinking about being an entrepreneur. Why? Because money is something that should work for you and your business and not be spent. And this is something that's kind of very, very central to this part one, where we talk about money. So my definition, if you invest money in anything, in our case, we're talking about businesses, it's capital. That's what capitalism means. You turn your money into part of your business, integrate it into it, and it starts to turn this machine that is your business, and it creates money, creates wealth. I do want to draw a line between investment and speculation. I think some of you have come to my earlier talks about real estate investment, where I take a stance. I really take this stance on investment and speculation, and I have a very, very conservative definition of what investment is. Everyone has a different line of where they draw, and beyond which it's no longer investment but speculation. But my definition of investment is anything that any endeavor through which you outlay some initial resource. It could be money, it could be your time and energy, your talent and expertise, and you turn whatever resource that is into a constant flow of cash, a cash flow. So if something like that happens, congratulations, you made an investment. Everything else is speculation. So what is a speculation? For example, a lot of people in the past year have been in the cryptocurrency business. That's my favorite example. If you bought like one Bitcoin or whatever in the height of 2017, people use the word investor, and I just kind of really try to hold my emotions, right here. You're not an investor. You're a speculator. You're a speculator of a digital asset. You're not investing. There's no cash flow, and there's only risk, right? And in the converse, there are investment strategy where you mix some speculation in there, but we're not getting there. But my definition that I will use for investment throughout the rest of the evening is anything that you turn into cash flow. So going back to the previous picture, right? It's this arrow right here. Anything that kind of closes a loop where you create a cash flow is a good investment. Money spent is an expense. So remember the previous picture, the top half. If you if you're a disciplined consumer, you can live a reasonable lifestyle without compromising your dignity and still minimize your expense. And everything you save throughout your early 20s, you can invest into a business, an idea, or anything that you find meaningful, and hopefully something that generates cash. Building passive income. So this is kind of where we get to the, probably the most technical part of tonight is I don't want to be your financial advisor, but these are kind of the pointers you can start thinking about. I started my 20s in real estate, so I'm very familiar with property investment. So in the Seattle area, you can easily find something that's 3 to 5% capitalization rate. We call it cap rate in real estate, that will generate $2,000 a month or something like that for you with a very modest size of initial investment. Because in real estate, you can get a lot of leverage out of your it's called a down payment. So we're not going to get into that, but that's one way. A lot of people are familiar with investment property, and that's one route to kind of build that financial foundation for whatever you want to do in life. Businesses with recurring revenue, that's another great one that I wanted to share with you. A lot of ideas can turn into a recurring revenue business. What do I mean by that? Again, we're not talking about, I listed like a service as a software as a service business, and we use the word SaaS a lot in the West Coast, in the tech world. Not every SaaS business need to be a huge thing. There are a lot of small businesses out there who can benefit from any sort of innovation. The pain points are vast, from payments to compliance to even basic stuff like keeping their licenses up to date or pay their quarterly taxes with the IRS or state. Stuff like that they're immense pain points for small businesses, and the opportunities for innovation is just so huge. And a lot of people are not capitalizing on that because innovation is always scarce where there's not enough kind of attraction to for people to build like something like $1 billion business into it, right? So if it's a small niche area, chances are they will love to have someone come in and solve their problems, and they will pay you a very reasonable recurring revenue, and you can build a micro a nano SaaS business out of it. And this is something I've done actually. Intellectual property, if you are a creative person, if you write books or write music, you are well on your way of creating recurring income with intellectual property. Again, this is not something I'm familiar with. I'm not that creative a person, but I've known people who have become very successful, just publishing a book or writing something online. And the channels through which you can monetize intellectual property are becoming more and more diverse every day. You can have something that's published online and directly monetized through your website. If you are familiar with basic marketing or SEO, you can sell it directly and keep all of that instead of going through a publishing house. So opportunities are getting more and more. I believe the opportunities are trying to tip towards content creator, intellectual property owners, and that's the world we're headed towards. And finally, dividend portfolio. I'm not so much a stock investor because I started my career in real estate, but dividend paying stocks are another great example of recurring revenue, a true investment, and something you should target is something between 2 and 5% yield. That's a reasonable measurement of return and risk management. So these are all examples of passive income that you can start building very well throughout your 20s. And by the time you are, maybe if you start when you're 21, by the time you're 25, you should have something that's like $1,000 to $3,000 of month of recurring revenue through any of these channels. And that's something you should try to target, because one day maybe you want to quit your job and truly have all of that time back to yourself. And doing that with no income versus having $3,000 or $4,000 of passive income every month, it's a very different calculus on your part. And I spent most of my 20s building passive income. So I want to take a pause because this is probably the most technical slide of tonight. So I'm sure some of you will have questions. So feel free to type it into the chat. And if I see anything, I will do my best to answer here. Okay, I don't see anything, so I'm guessing I did a fantastic job explaining everything. So I'm going to move along here. So money and sanity. I talk about having passive income is peace of mind. The first project you do, this is a fun topic because I get that a lot. People come to me and be like, "Hey, Alex, I have this idea. I want to get your feedback." And I say, "Great, what do you have?" And they're like, "Hey, I'm really passionate about this space." And I say, "Okay, great. Have you thought about kind of where you are in the process, and what are your pain points?" And they're like, "Yeah, the first question that comes to mind is I don't know if I can raise any money with it." And this is where I say, okay, let's take a pause. What is your goal with building this business, right? If your goal is, again, to kind of go down the Silicon Valley path of raising a seed round, an angel round, and then do your Series A, maybe get $10 million a check, sure, now is the absolute right time to think about your ceiling of your business, your total addressable market. But again, remember, very early on, I said that's a minority. Most businesses are not venture scale. So if your goal is to just build a business, and you already have a full-time job where quitting your full-time job tomorrow is not even part of the proposition here, then it's almost beneficial to you to think about business models where it doesn't need to be huge. You can build a niche project that's maybe like a $10,000 a month project, recurring revenue kind of a business, or maybe it's not a recurring, it's a service-based business, in which case, it's different math, but you can model that out and see how that changes your life, right? So we'll talk more about that towards the end. Your project doesn't need to be huge. In fact, statistically, people say 10 out of 10 businesses, nine will fail, right? So if you're honest with yourself, you have to prepare for that contingency of, this is your first project. Things are probably going to go sideways left and right. So budget the time, budget the resource, and budget the risk. And if it's a huge project, you're just going to fail bigger than if you did something that's smaller. And finally, recap, money is something you spend, and capital is something you reinvest into your business. And if you, going back to those two pictures, right, how you have a consumer mindset and then you have the entrepreneur mindset, you can, if you see money as something you spend, you will probably be working for money for a really long time. Whereas if you start seeing things in a different light, as money as something that works for you and that should only work for you, you may just become financially independent in a few years. And I say that with no moral judgment, by the way. I'm not here to tell you that entrepreneur, that this one way of looking at things is better than the other, because there's a reason why the consumerist mindset has kept the world in a very steady pace in the last few decades. It works, right? It gives most people something to work towards. But as an entrepreneur, it's required of you to see something different, to see it in a different way. And in fact, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. You can find something that's a balancing point between. All right. So part one, this is the end of part one. I'll give you a charge. This is something for you to think about when you go home. Well, you're already home. So when you get off your computer, maybe when you brush your teeth, what is your relationship with money? And I mean that in in a way that you have to be really honest with yourself. How have you spent money in the last year? We're at the end of 2020. Well, maybe 2020 is not a great example because COVID and people really changed their behavior. So look at your 2019 budget. Maybe pull up if you keep track of your money using credit card accounts or whatever, you have a software. Look at how you spent money and really think how that can change, right? What can you do to have that money start working for you? Can you make an investment? Do you have the latitude to be making an investment with the money that you're making versus the money you're spending? And I'm pretty confident most people are, quote unquote, leaving money on the table. Maybe you're not investing as much as you make. You're spending more than you can. You're spending more than you probably should, or something like that. Okay, let's talk about sanity. This is I put this as part two because it's the second easiest / the second hardest thing to talk about, because there is some science to this, but most of it requires a relationship with yourself. You have to be very frank with yourself as an entrepreneur. You know, a lot of the things we get to hide behind when we are in a corporate setting, we don't get that privilege when we're in the entrepreneurial world, because if you have a personal flaw or something like that. I don't want to call it personal flaw, but you know what I mean, like your shortcomings that kind of stop you from really achieving the altitude that you want to be at in the corporate world. These are the same exact things that will stop you right in your track when you're an entrepreneur. In fact, it will stop you even harder and you will fall harder. So we will talk about self-improvement. We'll talk about mental health and how you are, this is my kind of subtitle, you are your greatest asset, tool, and vehicle. So it is upon you to improve yourself. And how you do that? Well, you have to be extremely honest with yourself, almost to a point where being very cruel. And this is the picture. Let me break this down. I think I went overboard with abstract design here. Bottom line, on the very bottom of this, mental health pyramid is your mental health, and that's the bottom line. And I'll talk about that. And then why is it pyramid shape? I think of it as, you're climbing this mountain, and it's your job to constantly improve yourself and kind of remedy your weaknesses. And here's mine. I'm a very introverted person. You probably don't know, what this guy's been talking for an hour. I don't understand how as an introvert, because I worked on it. Emotional management, because introversion comes with these things that causes you to be more kind of a rational thinker. I'm more of a rational thinker, so every time I have to deal with something that's more on the emotional side, it takes a little bit of pause. All right, let's let me just really form myself, compose myself, and deal with this problem right here. Again, I'm listing my problem here is because this is an exercise I think you should do as well for yourself. Just erase those three things and fill it in the blank with things that you have noticed about yourself, or maybe feedback you've received from your peer or your management or your reports. Detachment, I get easily detached because because I get laser focused on things, and I can easily detach myself from, I could be in the middle of a conversation and I would just get caught in an idea and I would just completely get detached. And these things are kind of the hurdles you have to overcome as an entrepreneur. You have to patch yourself up and mend yourself, right? Because otherwise these things will simply become bigger and bigger problems as you face bigger and bigger decisions. Hopefully, if you're on an upward trajectory in your business, good for you. But it's very different from making mistakes. It's very different making the mistakes in your early 20s versus making mistakes, the same exact mistakes in your late 20s when you're making $1 million judgment call. So try to really iterate yourself, right? The idea of iteration is not just limited to product. The idea of lean startup, fail fast, fail early, make small incremental adjustments. These apply to you as well, because you are the greatest product you will ever have. In fact, you're the only product you will ever have. So iterate yourself, and that's something that requires, again, a level of cruelty to yourself that I think requires a little bit of calling out. So I want to take a slide to talk about mental health, because this is something that's been so real and so so blunt, right? I have encountered many people who have struggled with mental health, and the scariest thing about mental health is most people don't want to talk about it. Especially guys. So if you're a guy, you're probably brought up in a way that you're taught, hey, if you have something that's like here, keep it here and don't talk about it, because that's what real men have to do, right? So there's stigma associated with admitting to the mental health issues that you may have, and that's a very dangerous thing. Why? Because imagine you're a professional athlete, right? If you're a basketball player, well, you're probably going to require more physical health attention than anyone else in the world, right? Maybe you're I don't play basketball, but I imagine it's hard on your knees and your ankles. You probably have physical therapists, and there's nobody blinks an eye when they think about that. It's just, that's what they do. Well, if you're an entrepreneur, guess what? You are kind of the athlete of the mental health world, and it is entirely incumbent on you to be mindful of your mental health, and to kind of break that stigma that's kind of been that's how chances are how you're raised with. And have friends you trust who are open to give you feedback, like say, hey, I'm concerned about you. That's also very important, because case in point, I have a close friend of mine who's also a mentor figure almost, who was very close to me, who committed suicide this year. And that's something that struck me very hard as well, for multiple reasons. One, understanding that, knowing that he went through the process, and throughout that process, he didn't have anyone he trusted enough to give him that feedback. Hey, we think you are not doing well. We think you might consider getting mental health help. No one said that to him, and the fact that he took it upon himself to take his own life, that hit me hard as well, because everyone who's close to him would have been affected. In fact, I spent that whole day kind of just shut myself in the basement, and with the kind of drinking, which is not a way to deal with problems, guys. I do not recommend it, but that's what I ended up doing. And that's kind of a reflection as well, when you're going through mental health problems, and if you don't deal with it in the most productive way, it will manifest itself in the kind of societal problems that we are seeing today, especially in the Western world, in America. Alcoholism, substance abuse, domestic violence. These are all things that stem from mental health. So, I want to take a dedicated slide to talk about it, because if you're watching this, I'm hoping you're a leader of your community and you can share that message. There's nothing wrong with seeking mental health help, and it is just as important as physical health when it comes to entrepreneurship, especially entrepreneurship. If you're lucky enough to have a loved one who's supporting you, don't do it just for yourself, do it for them. So you don't make their lives more difficult as well. So there's mental health, and I will leave it at that. So going back to personal iteration, right? So I want to share with my introverted friends, because I'm guessing a lot of you are engineering background, and you probably at one way or the other, at some point in your life, one way or the other, consider yourself an introvert, or maybe you are. Introversion, I consider it as superpower. Do not let the media, or pop culture convince you that only extroverts or people can build amazing businesses and achieve great things in life. Introversion is a tremendous superpower that most people would be envious if you wield it in the right way, right? So on the right chart, I have a little matrix thing. Every PowerPoint deserves a 2x2 matrix, and here's mine. The x-axis is high energy versus low energy on the left, and the y-axis is high focus versus low focus on the y-axis. And you probably worked with colleagues who fall into any one of these quadrants. Probably met a lot of people who are high energy but low focus, and that's just chaos, right? You probably dealt with I don't want to stereotype, but there are certain job roles that are very prone to high energy, low focus personalities, and it takes a little bit of more management on your part to kind of get the most out of them, which is the high energy, right? And because they can be very infectious and awesome people, but it's kind of hard to figure out what they're saying. On the top left, you have high focus and low energy people, and that's kind of like the diametric opposite of that. You have people who are really obsessed with certain ideas, but they lack the execution to do it, right? So I use the word stagnation to describe that. And on the top right, this is where if you're an introvert, you can really cultivate yourself and be awesome at. You can be the top 1% of achievers by being both a high focus and high energy person. And it's usually the energy part that requires a little bit of management. And I will get to that when I talk about passion, right? Because that's the gas in the tank that will get you going and become a high energy, high focus introversion personality type, and you will do fantastic in the business world or any endeavor that you choose. Being an introvert also means you get to have a smaller number of friends and still do just fine. I have a lot of friends, but core friends, people I will go to. For example, if I have a moment where I'm like, okay, am I going through a mental health kind of a crisis here? I have 2 or 3 people that I absolutely trust I will go to, and that's, as an introvert, that's really all you need. And I see it really as a blessing, because I can spend all of my other time managing other things in life. Not that I don't like people, but I will love to spend like 20 hours a week building business rather than managing relationship. That's me. Finding your communication negotiation style. Again, this goes back to personal journey, right? So your journey will be different, but I'm sharing my journey as someone who's an introvert who has to learn all of these things from scratch, because my education and my upbringing didn't really prepare me for that. I learned math and physics. I studied math and physics, right? So finding an assertive negotiation style as an introvert again, it's a very, very interesting story. I got my, I think earlier in the slide, I shared that I have a real estate business, and I just kind of got my boots on the ground and started being a real estate agent and negotiated contracts after contracts. And I did, there was like a year where I negotiated like 50 contracts, and that just got me really, really good at communication, negotiation, understanding where people are coming from, listening to perspectives. And why did I do any of that? A lot of people asked, hey, Alex, why did you become a real estate agent? I was like, well, personal improvement, constant iteration. I know that's where my weakness is, and that's where I want to spend a lot of time on. Full-time, 80 hours a week, I will do that to become a really good negotiator. So it's that pyramid thing again, right? So understand what your weaknesses is and just really hammer it. Just do things that will get you better and better at the things that you're not great at. And that's what you absolutely have to do as an entrepreneur. There's no exception. You have to be to a point of cruelty to yourself. Again, I'm going to use that word. So I'm kind of towards the end of the sanity section. Just to summarize, the bottom line is mental health. Do not push yourself so hard where you're kind of like breaking down. That's not healthy. But at the same time, you have to pushing yourself to a degree where it's harder than most people do to themselves, and changes will happen fast when you do that. You will see yourself improve as a person and become better and better at what you do. It's almost like a superpower. Remember to have personal time, but not too much, because changes happens fast. This is my favorite anecdote. People talk about like people who win lotteries, right? A lot of people joke in social media and in the entrepreneurship circle that being a successful startup founder is like someone acquired you for like $300 million. It's almost like winning a lottery. Well, winning lotteries will ruin your life. I have never seen a single story where a person won a lottery and became the happiest person in the world. That chance of that happening statistically, historically, is absolutely zero. Why? Because change happened too fast to them. Like they're just not prepared for that kind of a dramatic change. Same thing in anything that will change your life so fast that it derails you is just not good. For me, I didn't hit a jackpot and become incredibly rich, thankfully, but I did hit the mark where I became financially independent. And that was a weird moment for me, because at some point I'm like, holy crap, I don't have to work, or actually I don't have to do anything, and bills would just get paid. That's kind of weird. And now it's like the equivalent of winning a lottery with your time, right? So imagine that. That's the really weird thing for me, because I started doing random stuff without focus, and I end up wasting a lot of that time. Just like, if you get $1 million in your bank account, you'd probably be wasteful with that as well. So that's something I really need to look back and kind of rein myself in and start managing myself over. And that's kind of where I'm leading to, which is the passion part of today's part, because today's talk, because you really need something that's your true north and really validates your value. And that's the only thing that can do that for you in your life is passion. So we'll talk about that. Before we get there, part 2, my charge for you. Again, this is something for you to think about when you're brushing your teeth before you go to sleep. Identify one critical aspect of your personality. I don't use the word personality like people use it in the sense that they talk about like horoscope or like the Myers-Briggs type or whatever. I don't mean that kind of personality. I use the word personality as it's a core part of your person. It's who you are, and how other people would describe you. Identify one part of that you can improve, and this is easier said than done. Most people come to me for advice, and they're like, "Hey, Alex, I would love some critical feedback." I'm like, are you sure? Do you really want critical feedback? They're like, I'm absolutely sure. This is the one thing I need right now. I want critical feedback. Just go crazy on me. And I will give them critical feedback. And 90% of these people, they just stop being friends with me. And the 10% that actually do it, we become good friends. So most people are not used to the idea of receiving critical feedback, let alone come up with them on their own and then act on it to improve. Most people go through lives as a constancy. Most people fix themselves in the mold that they are by the time they're 20, in fact, and they never change, and that's who they are. So if you can break that and iterate yourself, you are very rare, and I admire it, because I'm not there, by the way. I don't say it like, hey, I'm that kind of guy. I can't iterate myself every day. I don't. Like, there are things that I just know I would do. Like, there are times I will know I will lose my mind emotionally. I just need to hunker down, like lock myself in the bathroom and just manage my emotion. There are still days and times where I'm like that, but I'm getting to a point where I can see it coming and I can be ahead of it. So it's something everyone has to do. You have to be on top of who you are, of your personality, so you can identify the weaknesses and improve it. So that's the final part of the passion section, the sanity section. Sorry. So let's move on to passion, which is the part of what I wanted to share with you guys, because this is really what should be driving your journey, your path as an entrepreneur. Remember the things I say you shouldn't do. Uh, don't do it to get rich. Don't do it to be famous. You should do it for your passion. And I don't mean it in like a like a hand wavy way of like, hey, I really like driving cars, maybe you should be a race car driver, follow your dreams. I don't mean that. A lot of us, I assume a lot of us here are millennials, and you might just be raised that way, because that's the hallmark of our generation. But I really mean passion in a more kind of dispassionate, in the more thought out, the more refined way. You have to really think about what it means. So I'll explain that to you. Your passion probably doesn't make money. That's just the truth. Most people love doing stuff, and that thing, chances are, it takes money from you and doesn't make money. And here's an example. And this is, and again, an exercise based on my experience. It's a fill in the blank thing for you. So don't just copy my slide and try to tell people you like traveling. What is this? This is really an exercise, a worksheet, other than being a terrible looking dating profile. My passion, I love aviation. It's something I absolutely love to do. If you know me personally, I've probably taken you flying at some point, probably been in an airplane with me. I love aviation because the moment, the wheels left the ground, it's breathtaking, and I can do it every day if I can. And it has to do with some childhood fascinations that I have, but it turned into something that could motivate me, that will get me to put on my shoes every day and do it. But what's the problem? It takes way too much money. And if you want to do a business, you want to run a business in aviation, there's if you don't have a few $1 million, you're not going to get anywhere at all. So if you have a passion that's like that, save it for later. Because there are plenty of viable business opportunities in something like that. And once you have enough of a foundation, you can contemplate it. But initially, don't. Music, I love music. For those of you, again, if you know me, you're connected with me on social media. You probably see me like playing a guitar at some point. I just love music because, again, it has to do with my upbringing. Music is a language without national borders, right? And it's something that changed my life. And I love writing music. I love playing music. I sing. But again, you're not going to make enough money. So it's what I call a hobby. It's a hobby. So if you have something like music, it's a hobby, unless you're really good. If you're really good at music and people have been telling you, you can make a lot of money, and you should quit your job. And finally, traveling. I only put it on there to have 3 things. But I don't like traveling nearly as much as music and aviation. But I just want another example of something that takes money rather than make money. Again, you'll probably be like, "Hey, Alex, what about those travel bloggers?" Great. If you are a creative person and you're really good at video editing and stuff like that, that can complement your hobby that would otherwise take money, it's a great way to go about it. But keep in mind, if you do that, you're more of a video editor than a professional traveler, right? So think about how monetizing your passion actually changes into something else, because that can kind of create sometimes like a paradoxical situation where people love something and then they go into it for a business, and then they all of a sudden they realize they don't love it anymore, because in fact they're doing something that's completely different from what they started. Go back to the folk story of like that one musician who writes great folk music and gets picked up and moved to Los Angeles and get destroyed by corporate America. It's that kind of thing, maybe less campy, but keep in mind, monetizing your passion has a dark side to it. You might just get lost in the process. So remember these things throughout your journey. It could your passion could be a concrete activity, right? It could also be a mission. This is something I didn't list, but it's something you have to be aware of as well. Maybe your passion is changing your community. I know this is something we talk about a lot today. We talk about diversity and inclusion. I don't even mean it at that kind of high level. It's just maybe you're part of, we have a lot of friends here from the Chinese American community, the Chinese community. Maybe you just want to make a huge impact on that community that you're part of. And that's something that could absolutely be a passion. All right, so be realistic. If you have a passion that makes money, you have no idea how lucky you are. You are 1%. You should just quit your job and do that. There's no reason. If you have a passion that makes money right off the bat, even if you don't have any business background, you will learn it on the way, because you will. If you don't have any business partners, you will pick up them. You will pick up business partners in the process with your passion. So if you're that lucky and you're looking at this right now, first of all, I'm very envious. And two, you should absolutely quit your job and start doing that thing full time right away. No excuse. If you have a passion that eventually might make you money, you're still very fortunate. You're still very fortunate, because that tells me a couple of things. One, you have a passion. Most people don't, by the way. I don't think I ever mentioned that. Most people don't have a passion. I've talked to so many people throughout my career and my life that I have come to a point of realizing that most people are not passionate people. Which is why, again, maybe there's a causation or maybe a correlation why entrepreneurship is not for everyone. You really need a passion to survive. And if you don't have one, either find one or keep doing what you're doing in the meantime, or make peace with the fact that you might not be an entrepreneur. So back to bullet point 2, if you have a passion that eventually might make you money, you're still very lucky, because you can use whatever you're doing right now, your time. If you have a full-time job, you have a safety net of that full-time job. You can use that time as a runway to build up that passion, build yourself a nice solid foundation. Maybe start with a micro idea. Again, going back to my earlier point of, you don't need to make everything huge. You can build a small micro business that's sustainable, profitable. It doesn't take up a lot of time from you, and makes money for you. And in the meantime, you will learn so much about starting a business from scratch that next time, when you truly find that billion-dollar idea, you will just be able to hit the pavement running. So, and finally, if you have a passion that takes money, if you're there, again, you're still lucky. You have 1 out of 2. You have a passion that sets you apart. The fact that it doesn't make money, all that tells me is you haven't found a way to monetize it. So don't write it off. Be creative, and eventually you might just be able to turn it into a business. Because one thing I've realized throughout my journey is, if you truly love something that you do, and you keep doing it, you will meet so many people in the process, and you will do so many cool things and fun things in the process. You will realize opportunities that you don't get to when you're just not up close and personal with that thing you should be doing, right? So for example, when I started doing real estate full-time, I started getting really, really knee deep in the weeds about all of these different areas, these sub-industries of real estate. And again, pain points everywhere. If you are an engineer, you can easily, or business product person, you can easily identify these areas and start tackling them on your own. And you might just be able to monetize by virtue of being really, really close to the actual problem area, because that's something you love. Not everything needs to be $1 billion business. Okay, so let's wrap up this section with a final charge 3 for part 3. Ask yourself if your passion is a now business or a 10-year later business, because that exercise is way more meaningful than you think it would be, because it's really a kind of a gut check moment of you finding out if you have what it takes to be a person driven by passion, and that's what it requires to be an entrepreneur. And through that exercise, this is something I want you to take more time with. Don't just do this when you're brushing your teeth, because it requires a little bit of creative and criticality thinking. Maybe sit yourself down with a cup of coffee or tea and hot water or whatever you drink on a cold day, and just give yourself 10 minutes to talk yourself through it. Do you have a passion? Is it a now business, or maybe it's a 10-year later business? Okay, so I promised the organizer to have actually some pro tips towards the end, so I will save that, and you will actually like this, I promise. But I wanted to wrap up the actual, the main body of today's money, passion, sanity with 2 takeaway points. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. I know we're brought up as millennials and we're taught like we can do anything that we set our minds to and we can dream and make them true. No, I'm sorry to tell you. I'm sorry to be the one that tells you that. You will need to be different. You need to think different. You need to act different. You need to live different. And you need to conduct yourself in a different way from everybody that you have met in your professional life. Because by definition, you will be a minority when you become an entrepreneur. And if you act like everyone else and do what everyone else does, then who are you? Entrepreneurship does not need to be venture scale. Right. So, if I were a VC, my job every day is turning away kind of 95% of the pitches that I hear. And I've talked to VCs where they're like half of the stuff, or maybe a huge portion of stuff that we turn away are actually very viable business, but we just can't because it's not venture investors' business to invest in anything that's not going to 10x their return at the very minimum, because that's their business model. So if you have an idea that's simply not venture scale, don't write it off. Ask yourself why you came up with that idea, and if your passion aligns with what it takes to make that idea successful. All right, so take another pause to see if anyone has any questions about anything so far before we dive into the bonus material, which will be actually pretty technical. And these are FAQs I have gathered from talking with about a bunch of prospective founders, and I just heard these questions so many times that I just decided to put them in a section on its own to kind of talk about. So, all right, so I'm looking at chat. I don't have the Q&A thing, so if you have any questions, please type it into the chat. All right, I am not seeing anything, so I am just going to move along here. 1 second. Gonna take a quick second. All right. Pro tip number 1. I get asked this every day, like, how do I set up a legal entity, and should I do it in an LLC, or like do it by myself, or start a corporation? This is something I've done a lot, so I can share how I did it and why I did it. Again, this is not legal advice. I should never be telling you what you should do. If you have any questions about your particular situation, you should consult a lawyer, someone who's familiar with this. But I will share with you what I did and why I did it. Separate your businesses. This is very important. So this is you on the very left, and you own a bunch of things. Maybe you own some real properties. Maybe you own some businesses or some stocks, and you have some personal stuff like your car, right, which you own directly under your own name. When you start a business, depending on the nature of the business and whether or not you will be getting outside investment, the most 2 common routes are starting an LLC, which if you did, it will probably be an in-state LLC. So if you're in Washington, you will start a Washington LLC just to run that business, which is what I do. Or the other route is if you're seeking outside investment, your investor will probably want a corporation, because then they can immediately be a part of your cap table, short for capitalization table, where people decide their percentage of shares and ownership in a company. It's usually a spreadsheet. So, your investors want you to be already set up with a corporation. DE is Delaware. It's the most popular state to incorporate a corporation in. So if you're going down a route where you might be seeking outside capital, consider a Delaware corporation. If not, if you know for sure it's just going to be a lifestyle business, just register an LLC in state, get a business license, and you'll be off and running in no time. And properties, if you own houses and such, again, I own them in out-of-state LLCs for reasons of liability management, risk management, and all of that. And there are popular states for holding properties. 2 that come to my mind are Wyoming and Nevada. The reason why has to do with state law. Don't want to get into too much of it, but its rule of thumb is consider an out-of-state LLC, unless you're doing something more fancy like holding it in an irrevocable trust or like an offshore trust or company or alien company, like basically a foreign one. So these are things way more advanced. And if you don't know what these are, it probably doesn't apply to you. So properties, hold them under out-of-state LLCs. Stock holdings, this gets pretty varied and people have very colorful ways of doing it. If you own a bunch of stocks, you can put them in an LLC for estate planning purposes. So you don't go through stuff like probate if you die. You can put them in a trust, etc. Again, this is more for your estate lawyer to talk about. But the idea here is everything you own should be separate, so that if there's anything that's liability in any of these companies, they are compartmentalized and they don't affect everything else that you own, or worst case, you personally. So that's pro tip number one. I get asked that so many times a day. You guys have no idea. I made a slide so you guys know, at least see this picture. I get asked about where the next decade is. I'm always very humbled when people ask me that, because I have no impact on where the next decade is going. But here's some observations that I have made from talking with investors who do have that vantage point, and I've talked with founders who do have that kind of level of impact. So I'm just going to pass the message here. Deglobalization and nationalism are two things that are kind of cascading everywhere right now. So you will probably see a trend called the splinter net in the next few decades. Splinter net is combined two words, splinter and internet. So a lot of people, if you're Chinese American, you're probably already aware that Chinese has like a shadow mirror image of the actual internet. Every app has its version in China. That trend is going to accelerate and worsen in the next decade if things continue in the direction they are. So think about the opportunities that will create for entrepreneurs in terms of intellectual property arbitrage and creating stuff that doesn't exist elsewhere in the world, and just great opportunities. Localization of supply chains, again, that's a byproduct of nationalism, and COVID-19 really accelerated, the localization of, make things where they are. And if you're in the manufacturing industry, that's something that will be very thematic in the next 10 years and absolutely will be an opportunity area. Hard technology are seeing a lot of investment. People are realizing the irreversibility of global warming, and people are thinking harder and harder about these things that will actually impact humanity in a larger scale. So carbon, food, and energy are the kind of topics that people will be spending a lot more time, money, and energy. I'm talking about people at the very highest level of government and capitalism. You'll be spending a lot of money, time, and energy on these kind of topics. So if you are interested in building something that is preponderously huge, like food, just think about food, right? So that's something you can think about. It's not just internet technology anymore. Technology can change anything, and in the next decade, that's where the opportunity is. So I'm just gonna go very fast on this slide because I get asked a lot, but I'm always like, I'm not the person you should be asking. I'm just passing on the message here. Stuff to read. People ask me for book recommendations on what going back to self-improvement. These are 4 books that I think I find super helpful. First one is Venture Deals by Brad Feld. He's also an alum of mine. It's a book about how venture capital works in terms of how to interact with VC investors as a founder, how to read a term sheet, what they mean, different instrumentations of venture capital, like, you will probably hear about safe notes a lot, but before that, when venture capitalism was still kind of a dark art in the early 2000s, everything's like a priced round. How does that work? What does that mean to your cap table? Well, if you read that book, you will probably learn everything you will need to know about venture capital and raising money. Tell to Win by Peter Gruber is a great book about becoming a dynamic and persuasive storyteller, and that's something that will be unquantifiably important when you're a founder, because a part of everything you do is telling a story, and you have to tell it in a way that that lands, and sometimes you only get one chance to do it. So that's a good book to read. Lost and Founder by Rand Fishkin. Rand is a local entrepreneur, by the way. He's based in Seattle, and is one of the earliest people I've spoken with in my early 20s about startup, and he's given me some amazing advice. And this is a book that is equally brutal about the startup world and what it's like to be a founder, and it touches on some of the topics that I mentioned under the Sanity section. So it's a great book, and it's a great read, and it's a story. So I put a storybook in there for you guys. And finally, the 4 pillars of investing. This is probably the least related book to the other 3 books. It's by William Bernstein, and it's about investors' mindset. So it goes back to the money part, the part 1 of tonight. So it will teach you how to form a relationship with money that will get you through the many decades of your life, and you will appreciate it if you've never been exposed to the idea of stock investment or how to see money for what it truly is. So these are the 4 books. I would recommend you to take some time, maybe a day or 2, to read through, at least Google them to see what books they are, and maybe you'll be motivated to go through them. All right, so that is everything that I have for all of you tonight. Thank you for being a part of this and listening to if I convinced any one of you to embark on the journey of entrepreneurship tonight, then I have done a good job. And if I convince any one of you that this is not as scary a thing or as hard a thing, then again, I have done a good job. So I would love to hear your feedback on everything tonight. Maybe you have some follow-up questions. Maybe you want to get some Zoom coffee. These are ways to get in touch with me. And I have a question from one of the participants. How do I evaluate a project that I encounter? It's a great question. Depends on what do you mean, right? So if it's a project that I kind of ideated myself and I'm just evaluating it as a founder, doing a self-gut check, versus if I'm talking to someone and they're sharing their idea with me and I'm giving them feedback. But either way, I usually start with the question of how does that relate to you? And it's a very odd angle, right? Because a lot of people start with how big is the business opportunity, but I like to start in a different way. How does it relate to you? Maybe it's something that you just thought of. Maybe it's something that overlays with where you overlaps with where you want to be in life. So maybe it's a passion or passion adjacent. And then I will evaluate based on the way they articulate and the way they kind of present the answer. If I hear something that convinces me, then qualitatively, and then I will start deeper into the quantitative aspects of the business. So, for example, what's the standard questions? How tall is the ceiling? How many competitors do you have? What is your go-to-market speed and all of that stuff. But these are things that I think should be secondary. I think the founder and the reason why they do things should be paramount, and that's how I evaluate. Again, I'm not a venture investor, and that's a very critical thing I want to make clear, because I don't evaluate these things as someone who's potentially writing $1 million check, right? So I approach it in a way that I see myself as a mentor, and I want the person to have a great experience building a business, and that's kind of my agenda, which is why I ask those questions I ask. Can I briefly talk about what my 4 businesses do and how I prioritize? Great question. So I have 4 businesses, and they're in very diverse areas. So I have a real estate business, and that's kind of where I kind of got started in learning negotiation, and I got my real estate agent license, and that's still ongoing. So if you guys are buying a house, feel free to hit me up. And that is one of those business, what I call turn time into money kind of business, because there's no way to automate. Real estate is a very present full time, and I need to be there, right? So it's a turn time into money business, and it doesn't scale. So that's the extent of what that is. And eventually, I do see that kind of phasing out and in favor of businesses that do scale. On that note, my second business is a business to business or B2B enterprise SaaS business. So it's a monthly subscription business, and it happens to be in the real estate area. It's one of those things where I talked about earlier, follow your passion, right? If it's something you love doing, you spend enough time in the weeds, you will pick up, pain points from your customers that you will never be able to to even think about from the drawing board or just in front of a computer screen. So it's one of those things where I realized a lot of my vendors have a similar pain point that could be automated using computer vision. So I built an algorithm that will recognize images and then automate a process in real estate in a real estate industry that would typically take 8 to 9 hours using computer vision and NLP. You can shorten that to about 5 minutes. So if you sell that to your customers, if I sold that to my customers, they pay me a pretty reasonable monthly subscription, and that's very standard SaaS playbook. And fun fact, I've actually pitched that idea to many investors, and I never got an investment because why? The ceiling was not tall enough. It's not a billion or trillion dollar business, but it was enough. It was sufficiently profitable for me to spend, the development time it took from me to build the initial product and start put on my salesman hat and start calling people and get them to pay for it. So that was my second business. Third business is very boring. It's a capital management or property management company. Help clients manage properties that they own. Because again, I started my career in real estate. I just have a lot of expertise in there, and throughout my years, I've picked up clients that have that kind of need, and through networking, they're just like, hey, Alex, you have a company that does that. Here, manage my my money. I need to deploy it in real estate. And my fourth and final company is an online learning platform. We organize events to help people learn about different things that could help them in their professional journey, and they do get very technical. So today's talk is not a technical one, and I'm doing it in partnership with SEC, but my company does organize its own events, and we teach semi-technical to very targeted, very technical stuff, and it's almost like a learning platform. And again, this is something I do for fun. It's something I enjoy very much. From another listener, regarding to time, what does your typical day look like? Just curious. Did you work like 80 hours a week when starting a company? Thanks. Great question. So, think of time as a resource, just like money. You spend it to get something out of it, right? So it's an initial investment. Did I ever work 80-hour weeks? I actually did, but that's not when I was starting my own company. I worked 80-hour weeks for one of my previous employers. The reason why is I wanted to really learn what they had to teach me. So I voluntarily worked 80-hour weeks. I was probably a really great employee while that lasted until I left to start my own business. So I did work 80-hour weeks, but not during my startup journey. My typical week looks like, my four businesses. My one business that I have no control over where I spend my time is my real estate business, because if my client comes to me, I need to work. I have no other option. So because that's my duty. So that's the one thing I don't have control over. Everything else I can kind of shuffle around. Hey, I can do this, 1 hour of software development on a Tuesday evening as opposed to a Saturday where I'm just really busy with, showing or negotiating or doing real estate related stuff. So my typical week, I don't work hard. I don't, that's the whole point, right? My whole proposition of doing this is so you have financial freedom, you have control over my time. So I work about 30 hours a week, and the rest I spend with people that I care about, on projects that I care about, having fun. I'm 29, so hopefully next year it will be a more disciplined approach. I spend more time on businesses and making bigger impact. But going back, lifestyle entrepreneurship is about having control of your time. Where did I find my employees and business partners? Great question. A lot of my partners that I end up being great friends with are just random opportunities. So I went to a networking event that was actually in China, hosted by one of the VC companies. It's GGV, so GGV Capital. So I met a bunch of really cool people there, and I started a business as soon as I came back to the States. And this was 2020. This was this year. I started with a friend. We ran a prototype, and we just got the business up and running in like 2 or 3 months. It was great. Employees, sometimes you can hire great people. In fact, today, in this day and time, you can find great talent who have been displaced by COVID-19, who are extremely qualified. You can find them online. There are great websites you can post job placements at, like Indeed or whatever. I think Monster, that's still a thing, but I only use Indeed, and it does enough for me. And you can find people submitting their resumes left and right, and you'll be amazed how people are how many people right now are looking for opportunities. So again, if as a founder, it's your opportunity to make an impact and create jobs, right? On that business partner note, because I have something I want to share. I don't want to call it wisdom, but it's an observation. A lot of people want to start business with their buddies, and here's why I'm not a huge fan of that idea. Because if you spend most of your career in a corporate setting, your buddies are probably people you eat lunch with, which are probably your coworkers. So by definition, their skill set will overlap with yours so much that it actually makes less and less sense for you to partner with them. A good business partner should be someone that complements your skill set. So if you're a really great engineer, you should think about partnering with a product person, maybe a marketer or a salesperson, right? So and these are people that are harder to find in your normal day-to-day work. You really have to burst out your bubble, especially if an engineer like I was, to find these people to be your partners. So it takes a lot of networking. Going back, right? So assertive introversion. You have to break that mold and force yourself to do things you wouldn't otherwise do. And meet people that complement your skill set, not necessarily your buddies or friends, but if you find someone who has the right skill set, who has the same true north as you, they will make amazing partners, and you will be building businesses after businesses with the same person throughout your career. In fact, my partner that I partnered with one of my projects, I'm doing a second project with them. It's going to be, I'm so excited for this because we're doing something that's probably like 100 times bigger than our original project, the first project, and they're completely unrelated. But having the basis of working together, knowing each other, having that rapport, like a good business partner is gold. You will thank yourself for spending time to find the right person. Do you have startup buddies? How did you find startup buddies? Oh, I just answered that question. How did I find my startup buddies? If you do startup enough, you will have startup buddies. It's one of those chicken and egg things. How do you become a really good, bicycle cyclist? You just gotta have to ride the bicycle. So, it's, I say half joking. You really have to, immerse yourself in the entrepreneur ecosystem. And there's no other way to do that than really just take the dive, because you want to meet people who are doing this full time, just like you are, who are passionate about building things just like you are. And you will not meet them if you spend 40 hours a day, the best 40 hours every week behind a desk, looking at Scrum boards or writing code. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's opportunity cost if you can do one or the other. So to meet people, you have to commit to doing a startup. Okay, I think that's all the comments that I got. My contact information is there. Feel free to add me and we can get coffee. And that is, have I ever fired any people? Okay, that's a great question. I have fired people, and it was probably one of the most difficult decisions I had to make as an employer. And I don't want to get into too many details of it, but the rules of thumb is if people are so negative that they're affecting the organization, or if they are kind of turning relationships into zero-sum games, then it is time for you as a manager. If you don't have to be a business owner, you can just be a manager at any company. These are the same kind of decisions you'll be making to terminate. So it's a very serious thing, and it's something that every founder, every business owner, every manager should take very seriously, because you are affecting someone else's life. But it is a decision that you should make quantitatively, rationally, and you have to do it in a way that is firm and fully committed. So that's how you do it. Okay. All right. Q&A. I think we got someone. Oh, same question from Q&A. So, all right. I think I answered every question. It is now 9:24. I think we're doing pretty good on time. And want to thank again SCC and Will for hosting this. I'm going to turn the mic back to you for your closing remarks, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, Alex. It's a very inspiring and just open me to a lot of new thoughts. And yeah, thanks for sharing your stories. And I think we all learn a lot from you. So appreciate it.
My pleasure. All right, guys.
Cool. So we still got 5 minutes. So if you have any questions to Alex, you can reach out to him directly on LinkedIn or his email address. And we are gonna host another event next week, the same time. So stay tuned and welcome to join to another event hosted by CC. And that'll be it. And thanks, Alex, again. And hope you all have a great weekend. All right. Bye.